Have you ever looked at a company, maybe even one you work for, and thought, we're pretty good. We're not failing, but we're not exactly setting the world on fire either. So what's the secret? What really separates the companies that are just good from the ones that become truly great and stay that way for decades? Well, that's the huge question at the heart of Jim Collins' landmark research, and today we're going to unpack some of the answers. And trust me, they're not what you'd expect. So it all kicks off with this really powerful, kind of counterintuitive idea. Think about it. It's not usually spectacular failure that holds most organizations back. It's success. It's the comfort of being good enough. That feeling of, hey, we're doing okay, is exactly what stops us from making that disciplined, tough journey to become something truly exceptional. This is the big one. This question launched a massive 5-year study. The research team literally dug through decades of data on almost 1,500 companies, just to find the handful that made this incredible leap from good to great, and then sustained it. And what they found, the common threads between these elite companies, well, it pretty much turned all the conventional business wisdom of the time on its head. So let's get into what they discovered. Okay, so first things first. Before you can solve a problem, you have to understand it. And the first big insight here is really understanding why being good is such a dangerous trap to fall into. It's just human nature to settle once we get comfortable. And in the business world, that looks like hitting the quarterly numbers, keeping the board happy enough, and just staying put. When you're in that comfort zone, that intense burning pressure you need to start the really hard journey to greatness, it's just not there. That comfort, that good enough, becomes the biggest barrier of all. So how do you break out of that trap? What's the first step? Now, your first thought might be, okay, you got to hire a rock star CEO from the outside, someone to come in and shake things up. But it turns out the research showed that this whole modern myth of this superstar savior is completely wrong. In fact, what really works is pretty much the exact opposite. Just look at this contrast. The media, of course, absolutely loves the show horse, that flashy, larger-than-life leader with a huge personality. But the companies that actually went from good to great, they were led by what the researchers called plow horses. These were quiet, often even shy leaders who were just relentlessly focused on the work, not on building their own personal brand. And this led to the discovery of a whole new category of leader, something Collins calls level 5 leadership. And it's this fascinating, almost paradoxical mix. On one hand, these leaders are incredibly humble, almost egoless. But on the other hand, they have this ferocious, unshakable will to do whatever it takes to make the company great. It's that weird combination of humility and intensity that seems to create the magic. And here's a brilliant way to picture their mindset. When things were going great, the level 5 leaders would point out the window. They'd give credit to their team, to good luck, to other factors. But when things went badly, they looked right in the mirror and said, "This is on me. I'm responsible." And what's fascinating is that the leaders of the companies that didn't make the leap, they did the precise opposite. Okay, so you've got this humble yet driven level 5 leader in charge. What's their first move? Well, here we go again, flipping conventional wisdom upside down. They don't start with some grand vision or a brilliant new strategy. Nope, they start with people. This is where we get the famous bus analogy. Before you even start thinking about where you're going to drive this bus, your absolute first priority is who is on it. Get the right people on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus. Put your best people in the seats with the biggest opportunities, and only then, once you have the right crew, do you figure out together where you're going to drive it. And this example just shows the difference so perfectly. Back in the 70s and 80s, you had Wells Fargo. Their CEO was obsessed with getting the best and brightest talent on his bus, creating this team of equals who could argue and debate and figure things out. Then you had Bank of America, which had this rigid, top-down hierarchy where everyone just waited for orders. So when the entire banking industry got deregulated and thrown into chaos, which bus do you think was able to adapt and find a new path? Yeah, Wells Fargo thrived while Bank of America struggled for years. And this really gets to the heart of it. It's such a powerful distinction. It's not just about having a bunch of people. It's about having the right people. People with the right character. People who are disciplined, self-motivated. The kind of people who don't need to be managed but can be led. All right, so a level 5 leader gets the right people on the bus. What's next? They launch some huge, revolutionary new program that changes everything overnight, right? Well, that's the myth. The research found that from the outside, yeah, these transformations looked like these dramatic, sudden breakthroughs. But from the inside, the experience was completely different. We all love that story, don't we? The radical single-stroke revolution. A new leader comes in, makes a big announcement, and bam, everything changes. Well, the research found that this narrative is a complete and utter fiction. There was no single defining action, no grand program, no miracle moment to point to. The reality was a lot more like this. The flywheel. Imagine trying to push a giant heavy flywheel that's sitting still. That first push, it barely moves. You keep pushing. It starts to turn, just a little. You keep pushing consistently in the same direction. Turn after turn after turn, it starts to build its own momentum, until finally, you hit a point of breakthrough. It's not about one big shove. It's about the relentless accumulation of effort. Circuit City is such a perfect example of this. They were practically bankrupt in '73. For years, they just quietly pushed their flywheel, getting the right team, experimenting with store formats, refining their superstore concept. It took over a decade of that consistent pushing before the media finally noticed and called them an overnight success. But for the people inside, it was just another day of pushing that heavy wheel. So, you've got your level 5 leader, you've got the right people on the bus, and you're all relentlessly pushing this flywheel. But how do you know you're pushing it in the right direction? This brings us to the final and maybe most important piece of the puzzle, the idea that ties it all together. It's all based on this ancient Greek parable. The fox is cunning and fast and tries all these complex strategies to attack the hedgehog. But the hedgehog? The hedgehog knows how to do one big thing perfectly: roll up into a spiky ball and defend itself. And so, the simple hedgehog always wins. The good to great companies, they all acted like hedgehogs. So, your hedgehog concept is found right there in the middle, at the intersection of these 3 circles. And it's not a goal or a mission statement. It's a deep, simple understanding you get by asking 3 brutally honest questions. First, what can we be the absolute best in the world at? Second, what drives our economic engine? And third, what are we deeply passionate about? And wow, the contrast between Walgreens and Eckerd shows you the raw power of this. Walgreens figured out its hedgehog concept: be the absolute best, most convenient drugstores, period. Every single decision they made pushed that flywheel. Eckerd, which was a very similar company, just kind of thrashed around with no clear concept. And, well, you can see the result. The outcome couldn't be more stark. Walgreens became an enduring great company. Eckerd doesn't exist anymore. So in the end, all these principles, the level 5 leader, getting the right people on the bus first, pushing the flywheel, and finding your hedgehog, they aren't just about hitting your numbers next quarter. They're about creating a deep culture of discipline that can build an organization that achieves and sustains greatness for a long, long time. And this brings the question right back to us, doesn't it? Not just in business, but in our own careers, our own lives. What is it that lies at the intersection of your 3 circles? What are you passionate about? What can you truly be the best at? And what drives your personal economic engine? Because finding that answer, well, that's the first real step on the path from good to great.